Heads up. Heads up.
Good morning. We've got a busy week ahead, but of course, all of the things that Republican leadership is trying to jam before the August recess, not one will address the actual affordability crisis that American families are facing. Republicans are putting forward nearly $100 billion budget bill. But get this, not a single dollar, not one, will go toward lowering the costs that people face. Instead, Republicans plan to spend tens of billions of dollars on Trump's failed war in Iran, which has cost 3 more American service member lives over the weekend and has sent gas prices soaring yet again. Think about what we could spend with these resources instead. For what Republicans plan to spend on the war, we could fully fund a 3-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits and lower insurance premiums for millions. But Republicans are choosing a war over health care for the American people. At the same time, Republicans are also tying their voter suppression legislation to this bill in order to rig elections in their favor. This self-dealing in corruption is not what the American people voted for. Americans elected Donald Trump and Republicans because they were promised lower prices and a better quality of life. But Trump has broken every single promise to lower costs on day one. While Americans are getting squeezed at the grocery store, the gas station, and at the pharmacy, we're watching in real time Donald Trump profit off of the presidency and waste their hard-earned tax dollars on a war that they didn't want. It's no wonder that poll numbers have him tanking. Nearly 70% of Americans disapprove of his handling of inflation and the cost of living crisis. Well, November is right around the corner. And while Trump might not be on the ballot, Republicans who are greenlighting this agenda are Mike Lawler, Derek Van Orden, David Valadao, Jen Kiggins. These are the members who will have to answer to their constituents on who they are putting first. Democrats won't stand while Trump and Republicans waste American tax dollars, and we're going to continue to tackle affordable kitchen table issues that Americans are facing. Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Private Isabella Gonzalez, age 19. First Lieutenant Tyler James Fian, age 25. And Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, age 30. Those 3 service members recently died in the unconstitutional war in Iran. Now, at least 17 U.S. service members have died in this unconstitutional war. And why did they die? They didn't have to die. They died because Donald Trump and his rubber stamp Republicans entered a war of choice with no strategy, a lack of defensive munitions, and a lack of planning. U.S. troops are now stationed at multiple bases that Iranian missile and drone strikes have hit. Because of the lack of planning and the inability to defend these bases, the sons and daughters of Americans are now exposed to Iranian strikes. And what are Donald Trump and Republicans focused on? Putting Trump's face on the $1 coin, putting Trump's face on a $250 bill, putting Trump's face on giant banners all across Washington, D.C., putting Trump's name on airports, putting Trump's name on federal buildings. Shame on Donald Trump for the callousness towards the lives of our American troops. And what is the Republican response this week? To give a blank check to the administration to continue funding this illegal war. And this war has also resulted now in gas prices rising to over $4 nationwide on average, for price inflation, for the cost of goods going up. We call on Senate Republicans to pass the War Powers resolution that the House passed and get it to the President's desk. And with that, I'm so honored to introduce my friend and colleague, Brendan Boyle, the ranking member of the Budget Committee.
Thank you. It was just a couple of years ago in 2024 that Donald Trump campaigned throughout my state, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and indeed all of the battleground states. And his biggest single promise was when he said, and I quote him, "I will lower costs on day one." Well, here we are, 18 months later, and he has completely failed to keep that promise. Gas prices higher, food prices higher, inflation across the board, higher and going higher still. Why? Directly because of Donald Trump's policies and the rubber stamp Republicans who approved them. It started a year ago in what they promised would be a big, beautiful bill, but became a big, ugly law for the American people, ripping away health care from more than 15 million Americans in order to fund tax cuts, mostly for the wealthy and well-connected. They are now doubling down on that 1 year later through their so-called Reconciliation 3.0 bill, which passed the Budget Committee last week and will be on the House floor this week. Now, their bill, mind you, is $95 billion. Most of that money is going toward funding this reckless Iran gamble that Donald Trump has gotten us into with no plan on how to get us out of it. Most of the $95 billion goes toward that, with, by the way, no offsets whatsoever. So the crowd that always likes to cry crocodile tears about deficit and debt, the same crowd that added more than $4 trillion to our national debt through the bill a year ago, now is adding $95 billion more in deficit and debt. If you take the entirety of all of the bills that they have pushed over the last 18 months and signed into law, in addition to this one, $5 trillion added to our national debt, more than any other Congress in such a short period in American history. Now, you might be thinking, well, given that affordability, or the lack thereof, is still by far the number one issue on voters' minds, surely there is something in the Republican Reconciliation 3.0 to bring down costs, to bring down food prices, to bring down gas prices. We searched through it, 47 pages, 6,560 words. Not one word about affordability. Not one initiative, not one, to bring down costs for the American people. We have a president and a Republican majority that just doesn't care about the increased costs the American people are having to pay. The American people deeply reject this agenda by more than 2-to-1 margin. They are right. We will be proud to vote against this. Thank you.
Questions? Andrew?
The DCCC is spending, at last I checked, nearly $500,000 in Arizona's first district on behalf of Marlene Galanwood. That's a contested primary. There's a real chance that she doesn't win, which would be the third time this cycle that's happened. If Galanwood fails to win, is it time for the DCCC to reevaluate whether it should be spending in party primaries?
I think the DCCC is focused on winning elections. I think that's what all of us up here want them to be focused on. I think every decision that they make is through that prism. I know that may not be popular within every corner, but I think that's their mandate and their charge is to get 218 Democrats so we can end this chaos, so we can defeat even the hint of these reconciliation proposals and push back on Donald Trump. They're focused on getting 218. That's their focus. I think, we trust Susan DelBene on the tactics and how they get there. And I think a deeper dive and more questions are probably better off campus. Max?
With this is the last week before the August recess, members and candidates are going to be campaigning in earnest as summer kicks off. What is your message to House Democrats going back to their districts and candidates saying to voters, even as a Democrat, should take back the meeting?
I think we can just remind people what's on their television and what they're going through, but I don't really think that they need a reminder. They don't need a reminder that gas prices are rising. They don't need a reminder that grocery bills and utility bills continue to go up. They don't need a reminder that Donald Trump said we were going to lower the costs on day one. He said he was going to cut your utility bill in 12 months from being elected. None of this happened. All of those lies, false promises, whatever you want to call them, while Donald Trump continues to rake in resources, trade stocks, make $2 billion, all of this. The American people don't need a reminder of it, but I think it's very clear what House Democrats stand for. We want to fix health care, we want to lower the costs that people face, and we want to end the corruption. That's a pretty simple agenda, and then we're going to also have a healthy amount of oversight and accountability from every committee on this administration. That's what we're going to do. And so when Sunday comes and we start the 100-day clock ahead of us, I think that's what you can count on House Democrats as we move around the country talking with friends and neighbors and voters about.
I urge the White House to send Donald Trump to every single swing district in America. He can explain to the American people in those districts why gas prices are up, why the cost of living is up, and he can also explain why he was at his golf course and at a sporting event when 3 U.S. service members were killed in Iran.
Right?
There's likely to be a vote on a continuing resolution this evening. How are you planning to vote on a continuing resolution, and is Democratic leadership going to whip against the resolution?
I don't know if a decision was made on whipping. I'll be voting no, and I'll be voting no with Ranking Member DeLauro. I think that there are, some drafting errors within the CR that give Customs and Border Patrol flexibility to move money around. The administration said that all of that was funded within Reconciliation 2.0, and I think they're creating other opportunities to transfer funds, and we've seen what those agencies can do over the recent weeks, and many of us have concerns. I also haven't seen the list of, I think it's over 100 anomalies that the administration is requesting. That is not a part of this proposal as I understand it. So all of that are signs pointing to this just not being a serious proposal, it not being cooked in a way, and I don't think that Ranking Member DeLauro was a part of the process, and so I'll be voting a no, and if any members ask, I would encourage them to do the same. Michael?
Sticking with the CR and appropriations, since you're an appropriator and Mr. Boyle is here, I'm wondering if you can kind of step back and talk about how reconciliation has impacted the appropriations process. So much of what Republicans are trying to do has usually been done through the bipartisan appropriations process, but immigration, defense spending, all of these things are now being forced into reconciliation. I'm curious, does this provide kind of a playbook for Democrats when you all have another trifecta? Or are you all interested in kind of getting back to the way things used to be, where these things were negotiated in a bipartisan manner?
I think it's a fair question. I think my actions moving forward are going to be shaped by how Republicans have treated this Congress. It's an unfortunate reality that they have broken the Appropriations Committee and process. That's just the reality of it. They chose not to have bipartisan discussions. They have chosen to go down a reconciliation path to fund not emergencies, but to fund just everyday priorities that they have. Rather than engage in substantive conversations with us, they have chosen to use unpaid for money. They've chosen to drive up the deficit to enact their priorities and to give maximum flexibility to a lawless agency like ICE. That's just the reality of it. So I'm sure that that will shape members as they advocate priorities and think about how to accomplish things moving forward. But that's all at the hands of this Republican Congress. Anybody else?
I'll just, since you referenced me, and I think we've talked about this on a previous occasion. Look, take Russ' vote at his word. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, maybe it was last 6 months or a year ago, he said the problem with the appropriations process is that it is too bipartisan. So it is part and parcel of a pattern of this administration wanting unilateral power to stiff arm or give the Heisman to the judicial branch and the legislative branch and run things entirely themselves. So if you take that combined, when I say that, the fact that they're using reconciliation now for what had been ordinary appropriations, that combined with what they're doing on impoundments is a really dangerous overreach by the executive branch in this country. I have a bill, the Congressional Power of the Purse Act, that would give Congress more tools to enforce the law that already exists. And those are the sort of reforms that I'll be interested in come next year if there's a change of management around here, which I hope and believe there will be.
Nick?
I want to get your reaction to these 50% tariffs that the Trump administration announced yesterday on Canada. Is this something that we can expect to see any action from House Democrats on like the previous resolutions of disapproval or something like that?
It's possible. Obviously, with the limited calendar that we have in front of us, we'll be working with our ranking members to ensure that that we respond. I think many of us feel, especially on the heels of a successful World Cup with Canada and Mexico as partners, that the president just kind of waited until that was over to do this. But there's no rhyme or reason. He has no method to the chaos. His chaos is the point. Pain is the point, and harming our communities, especially those border communities and Great Lakes communities, is one of the sad realities of this administration. Those communities are going to continue to suffer as a result of this, and we need to forcefully push back. How much we do that, on the record, is dependent on the congressional calendar at times as well.
Yeah. Tariffs increase prices. And Donald Trump then just increased tariffs on Canada by 50%. He now is increasing tariffs across a broad range of countries. After the Supreme Court struck down a number of these tariffs, the administration was forced to give refunds not to foreigners, not to foreign countries, but to Americans. And it's, once again, a Trump tax that is raising costs on the American people. And I really hope that the American people understand this when November comes.
Eric?
I think the argument that the Iran war was a blunder, but how do we get out of it? Do we just leave, or what's the solution?
Look, I think there was no strategy to go into Iran, and I think that's one of the most critical mistakes, is that this administration didn't have a plan. On day one, they listed goals. On day two, they listed more goals. Each time they come to Congress, they give a different set of revisionist history. It's incredibly unfortunate where we are, and it's going to take a high level of diplomacy to get us out. But that's exactly what we should be doing, is charting a strategy and a plan on what the next 60 days looks like, what the next couple months looks like, working with allies and partners. But each time the administration starts down that path, they step on themselves and they get in the way, and then they end up listening to different voices, and then they end up with more bombing campaigns, and then they end up, so this whipsaw behind diplomacy and aggression, I think, is confusing to everybody. But we aren't charged with those decisions. The executive is charged with those decisions. Our job is to hold them accountable and to ask questions, and each and every time we do that, we get different answers. And so I think that's going to make it harder moving forward.
Congressman John McGuire has legislation to narrow the birthright citizenship process and sort of restrict it, citing Justice Kavanaugh's opinion. First, just your reaction to that, but also if the Democrats do regain the majority, is there going to be an effort to codify some of the things that are sort of taken for granted in the Constitution?
I think it's shocking when members run around saying that they're guided by the Constitution, and then they want to rewrite the Constitution and get rid of birthright citizenship. And I think Congressman McGuire is just the latest in a long string, unfortunately, of those wanting to do that. The 14th Amendment is pretty clear. If Republicans have problems with the 14th Amendment, there are ways that they can work with the states, I suppose, to try to unwind that, and I would encourage them maybe to run for governor or state legislature to start those efforts. But I think all of us are interested and focused on how we preserve and protect the Constitution and our democratic system. And if there are ways and if there are opportunities that we have to ensure that, we're going to look at them. But we aren't going to rewrite the Constitution, and we aren't going to spend our time doing that when the highest court in the land has dealt a blow to Donald Trump. I think this is pretty settled law, even if our Republican colleagues don't believe so.
On Iran, what can Democrats do, if anything, to inject some oversight into this? Rules committee struck down an attempt at oversight to be attached to the NDAA, I think. And so if that's going to kind of keep happening, what's the next move to overcome this?
The House of Representatives is a majority vote institution. We have opportunities. We have we have privilege resolutions that we can offer, and we have offered. We have passed and won bipartisan efforts with the War Powers resolution. That speaks for itself on where members are and where a majority here in the House of Representatives sits. And so we're going to use the opportunities we have in the Rules Committee to add amendments to NDAA, to future appropriations bills. Each and every time we will do that. But I think the American public is clear that this is a war that they didn't ask for, and I think they're also very clear that Democrats want nothing to do with this. And so that'll be the case that we make over the next 105 days or so.
All Democrats, with a few Republicans, passed a War Powers resolution off the House floor. And so we urge Senate Republicans to pass that to the president. In addition, even though Republicans have refused to do any hearings on the Iran war, they still have to do some hearings just in general oversight on, for example, the Department of Defense or on United Nations ambassador and so on. And at these hearings, we get to ask questions on the Iran war. So tomorrow, the House Foreign Affairs Committee will have United States Ambassador Waltz at the hearing, and so he'll be getting a lot of questions about the Iran war. And hopefully this war is going to be ended soon. But if it is still around next term, on day one, Democrats will pass a bill to end the Iran war. We will pass a bill to end tariffs, and we'll make sure those become law.
Last question.
So Republicans spent their press conference calling you communists, and they're pointing to DSA wins in primary. So first of all, talk about the accusation of communism, and what is the Democratic Party's relationship with the DSA?
None of the members up here are members of the DSA. I can't speak to what that group stands for, what their focus is. We're members of the Democratic Party, and I think it's laughable when Speaker Johnson and Republican leadership devotes all of their time to talking about this. It's because they're fleecing the American people. They're trying to distract from spending $5 trillion, as Ranking Member Boyle mentioned, on 3 reconciliation bills, none of which they paid for. $5 trillion in new debt for the American people, without a single dollar of real relief to working class Americans. I mean, that's what is right in front of them, and they choose to focus on communism. I don't understand what they're focused on. I think it's a Trump administration that's looking to buy pieces of private companies. So maybe it's a bit of self-reflection that they need. We're all confused by it, but look, the American people aren't. The American people know that their lives are getting tougher, and they know that this Republican Congress and Donald Trump haven't done a single thing to make life easier for them and their families. Everything else is just so performative and so distracting. But people are struggling, and those are the same people in our communities and our districts that we're fighting for. And every Democrat who comes and takes an oath on January 3rd for the next Congress, their mandate and responsibility is going to be to make life better for people. That's who we are. That's why we're Democrats running, and that's the focus and the prism that we're going to make decisions about moving forward. Thank you.
Walk across again.